being here. We welcome you to Martin Middle School. I am the proud principal, Miss Edna Cortinas, here at Martin. It is my second year. I want to introduce also my assistant principal, Mr. Guillermo Tabasco. And we also have some distinguished guests from our district who are going to start this conversation for our community. Okay.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us. Before we dive into the agenda, I wanted to introduce Ms. Stacia Pascal. She is our Director of Strategic Planning and Organizational Effectiveness, and she's going to lead us in an inclusive welcome.
Thank you so much. I love having a microphone in the morning when you have the baritone of just waking up, and then it gets to hum through the crowd on the microphone. So thank you so much for this joy that was unexpected. So my name is Stacia Pascal, as Ali said, and before we begin this meeting, I really want to take a moment to level set us into why we're here. And so I invite you to take out your phone. We all travel with it. It's probably already in your hand. And in your phone, I invite you to find the picture of the person that has centered your why for being here today. So find the picture of that person. There's somebody that has centered you being here today. Now for me, it's this lovely young man right here. He's the class of 2025 graduate from Navarro High School. And thank you, he is my why. So I invite you to find the picture of your why and find someone close by and share with them, why is this person your why? Make sure you introduce yourself as well. So we'll take about 2 minutes. Find someone close by, share your why. All right, you've got about 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. All right, I invite you to find a comma and then a nice pause. Because we could go on and on talking about the heart of our why. They bring smiles to our faces, they warm our hearts, they push us to do hard things. And so as we sit in this meeting, I just want to reconnect us to our why and how we work together to ensure that all of our kiddos have the things that they need and deserve. So I thank you so much for engaging with each other, and I'm going to pass the mic to Ali.
Thank you so much, Stacia. So this is our agenda. We're going to start out, we did our warm welcome. We're going to review our norms and the purpose of the meeting. We're going to provide an overview of some of the campus-specific proposed changes in the consolidation and boundary change plan. And then we took from the comment card, the digital comment card, we took the questions from there and put them on the slides, and we're going to address those questions first. And then we can definitely do a back and forth. If there's follow-up questions or questions that y'all came with, we want to make sure we get to those. And then we'll talk about next steps. But first, the meeting norms. We ask that, and these might be familiar to you if you participated in the community conversations that we had virtually. There's another one coming up on the 27th and on the 8th in person at Delco. But we want to build the future together. So we're going to acknowledge challenges while also focusing on ideas that make our district stronger, more equitable, and sustainable for years to come. We're going to honor time, so each speaker, we're going to try to keep it to about a minute for remarks, and the same thing goes for our responders, so that we can try to get through everyone's questions. Honor each other, speak to one another, not at one another. Respect is non-negotiable, so we are going to ask that there's no interruptions, personal attacks, and if possible, no side conversations. We want to honor the process, so this meeting format allows for thoughtful responses. Please allow our leaders to respond without interruption. But like I said, if there are follow-up questions, we're happy to have a back and forth because we want everyone to leave with a shared understanding. Honor intent and impact. We may disagree on ideas, but we assume positive intent and focus on the shared goals: strong, equitable schools for all students. Honor space and voice. If you've spoken once, that we ask that you allow others to share before we would call on you again. We want to stay solution-oriented, focusing on ideas, solutions, and understanding, not blame or frustration. And we want to embrace transparency and empathy. These are difficult conversations, but we're going to meet them with compassion, clarity, and honesty. Whoops, and so those are the norms in Spanish for our Spanish speakers. And our purpose of the meeting. So we want to, like I said, we want to make sure that we respond to some of the questions that were submitted via the comment card. That comment card is open through the 28th, so I think that's next Tuesday. There are QR codes at the front and over here on the bookshelves. If you haven't gotten a chance to submit a comment card, you can do so more than once. You can comment on more than one school or idea, so please feel free to continue using that. We want to gain a shared understanding of what are the actual proposed changes and what is the district rationale behind them, and then gain insights from y'all that will inform potential refinements to the draft plan. So we will have a kind of marked up, revised version of the plan that we will share October 31st. That is when it will be posted to the board and shared out with the community so that the board can then discuss those revisions at their November 6th board information session. And the planned vote is, as a reminder, is November 20th. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to one of our panelists, Christine Seamport. But before I do that, I'm going to just have our panelists go ahead and introduce themselves down the line, starting with our superintendent.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Matias Segura. I'm the superintendent for Austin ISD. Happy to be here this morning to have a conversation, answer any questions that you have, and be as responsive as you can, and the team and I will be that for you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Yvette Cardenas, and I have the honor of serving multilingual education and early learning. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Good morning. I am Rachel French. I'm Director of Planning for the district and the Project Manager for the consolidations process.
Good morning, everyone. Christine Steenport, Operations Officer.
Good morning, Jennifer Baker. I'm an Executive Director of Special Education.
I'm going to stand up a little bit and use the screen, so thank you all. So when we started this effort, it's really, we are really looking at the future. And I know our superintendent, he wants for the school district is every family should have access to an excellent neighborhood school, one that is vibrant and well-resourced. And we've talked about what well-resourced means. And this is one step for us as a school district to become a bit more well-resourced throughout this process. So I want to kind of get right into it as our proposal. As you know, part of this draft school consolidation process, this would mean that Martin is proposed to close, and so those students of Martin would then be rezoned depending on where you live, and I can show up a boundary map very soon after. And it would be, students would be reassigned to Keeling, Lively, and Marshall Middle School based on the address for the 26-27 school year. And so we have a school finder. It's a little bit more helpful. It's an interactive map where you can type in your address physically, and you can see your feeder pattern, you can see your elementary, your middle, and your high. I also want to talk about Marshall Middle School a little bit because this was a school that was an assigned campus before. We had to create a boundary for Marshall Middle School, so that's something new that really for middle schools took a new section. So that's something that we just recently added in, so I wanted to point that out. So what does this mean for my school? Martin Middle School will temporarily close, and students, like I said, would be reassigned to those 3 schools, Keeling, Lively, and Marshall, based on their address. And I know you're like, what does this mean? Our board and our administration has really wanted to see what Martin Middle School could be in the future. And Superintendent Segura can talk a little bit more about that and what that could be in the future. It could be another campus. Austin ISD has never had a K-8 model school, and so that's something that could be in the future. And that's something that our board and the administration will be exploring, and so there will be engagement about that for the future. And a little bit more about the plan. If you live in that boundary, again, those 3 schools, but we have a lot of questions about transfers too, or what happens if you are rezoned. So if you are a transfer student, you can return to your zone school or apply to transfer to another campus. So there's still the options within Austin ISD. So I wanted to make sure that that was well known of what could happen if, right, the school was preparing to close, and then what the choices are. So here is the map. So as you can see here, this is Martin's boundary here. And so because of that and the new boundaries for this part in red here, this would be rezoned to Keeling. And then this part, like I said prior, we've always had Marshall, but it never had a true boundary. It was really just an assigned school. We had about 8 or 9 elementaries that were assigned there. So this was a part of that process. We had to get Marshall's boundary in, so we folded that into this process and was able to give them a boundary. And then we have here, if you live within these areas, then these would be zoned to Lively. So kind of just wanted to showcase what that looked like. Okay, and I am going to pass it to Allie to talk a little bit about what this would mean for the turnaround plan.
So one of the things we wanted to share with y'all is that, as you have heard before, prior to the consolidation plan releasing, we shared that Martin would need to have what's called a turnaround plan, and that was due to the 3 years of consecutive unacceptable ratings that the school had received from the state. And so that turnaround plan, we wanted to make sure that y'all understand kind of how that works. So according to the TEA's rules, if you are choosing to close a school and reassign students as part of your turnaround plan strategy, which is what's proposed for Martin, the turnaround plan follows wherever the majority of students are reassigned. And so in our plan, if you remember that last slide, the biggest school was Keeling, and that's because the majority of Martin students will be being reassigned to Keeling. And so that means that as we develop this turnaround plan, if we move forward with this proposal and our board approves, we would then be creating a joint turnaround plan that would be a turnaround plan for the Keeling-Martin combined school. The appointed principal would then have the authority to hire teachers and staff that meet the turnaround plan staffing criteria, in prioritizing employees from the 2 school communities. So one of the things we've developed, our talent strategy department has developed some guidelines for how we would staff schools in these various scenarios where there's a consolidation that has a turnaround plan involved or a consolidation that doesn't have a turnaround plan involved. But one of the things that we have outlined is that whenever we look at what percentage of the students are going from one school to another, we want to aim to try and make sure that the staff kind of mirrors that same level. So say you have 70%, and I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, but say you had 70% Keeling students and 30% Martin, then we would attempt to hire so that the staff also kind of reflects that balance, so that there's the same kind of percentages more or less reflected. It's not going to be perfect math, obviously, but that's kind of the goal. Current staff who are not hired at the Turnaround Plan campus, so in this instance it would be Keeling Martin, would be invited to attend internal match fairs. Those will be in February and March to find a new position within the district. Our goal is to make sure that every staff person that wants to stay with Austin ISD has a place to land. And then this school, the combined school, any school that has a turnaround plan, so that would be Martin and Keeling, but also all the others. Part of this consolidation plan is that we would free up dollars from the consolidations and reinvest a large amount of those into the turnaround plan schools. We're looking at about an $800,000 investment of extra support for those schools. We have kind of a proposal within those staffing guidelines of what that could look like, but it will really be customized to each school. But it can be things like extra counselors, extra assistant principals, instructional coaches or content interventionists to support instruction, parent support. So they're going to have that kind of bucket of money to figure out how do we best invest to meet the needs of this new combined school community that's also working on a turnaround plan. Thank you. So next we had a few questions from the comment card, so we're going to first start by going through those questions, and of course if you have follow-up questions to these questions, feel free to raise your hand. We do have a second mic we can pass around, but if you'll go to the next slide. The first question we had was what promises can we get that Martin campus will be able to reopen in the future and with input from the community, and this is from Eric R. That's supposed to be in Spanish below. I apologize, I'm not sure how that happened.
So, first off, I just want to acknowledge that this is a very harmful moment in this part of the community. It's not lost on me that this is a challenging conversation. So again, I very much appreciate y'all being here. We are desperately trying to address, historical issues that we've had in our system for well over 100 years. This plan is complex. It's multi-layered. There are so many things that impact one another, and ultimately what we're trying to do is to address a couple things, right? We want to align feeder patterns, and this is all going to tie back to the question, but I want you to know these things. We want to align feeder patterns. In East Austin, for over 144 years, we have not had aligned feeder patterns. We have little schools that go to 3 and 4 and 5 high schools. In other parts of town, that doesn't happen. You have one middle school go to one high school. You can think about how community is kept intact. You can think about how programming can be aligned when you have that type of succession planning and sequencing in our system. We don't have that in East Austin. The other thing this plan attempts to do is to address our response to the turnaround plans required by the Texas Education Agency. So the 2023, 24, and 25 accountability kind of changed how we have to respond to ensure that we keep the ability locally to determine how we educate our students. And so Martin Middle School is one of the schools that is required to submit a turnaround plan to the Texas Education Agency. And so this plan accounts for that. I want y'all to know we didn't arrive at this plan thinking about that first. We went through the work and then layered in our ultimate response to TEA. The other thing that it has to address is consolidations. We are running a deficit budget. We cannot be at a moment where we are not able to fund the things that we have to fund in order to support our students no matter where they are. And right now we're just not on a pathway to do that, so we have to make some difficult decisions. The other thing we want to do is we wanted to stabilize programming. We have programming across this city that is not positioned to be successful for years to come. Most notably our wall-to-wall dual language programs. Our emergent bilingual student population in those programs are 14%, 21%, 22%, and 44%. A healthy program is 50% in time and in the number of students that are emergent bilingual and non-emergent bilingual. When you think about how the city's changed, if we don't move and create access for those emergent bilingual students, these programs will not be sustainable for years to come, and we know how important they are to our system. And I would say lastly, our transfer policies. We have transfer policies in Austin ISD that have been doing real harm, honestly, to our school system. There are procedurally things that we do internally that need to be controlled better. There are things that we need to really understand, and this plan will also incorporate those. So the reason I want to bring it back to Martin Middle School and why certainty around what the future will be is because, yes, this plan considers a turnaround plan that has the majority of students going to Keeling. We expect that that will be able to break the accountability chain, then reducing that weight, right, from our system. And in the timeline, in the time that that move occurs, we will engage with the community and we will build out what the future for Martin will be. Christine mentioned pre-K through 8. That's not a done deal, right? We only put that on our screen because we've heard from different community members, we've heard from different stakeholders in the past that going to an EC8 model is something that we should explore. We collectively will propose something that aligns with our community, aligns with the needs of the system, and ultimately brings back something new to Martin. The challenge that I have is that there's some certainty that our community wants, and I understand that. But we cannot give that certainty as to what it will be until we go through that process. But through this feedback loop here engaging with you all, what I'm trying to do is to figure out what language can I use in the plan that allows our trustees to have confidence that there will be a school here in the future and in this timeline. And that will allow us to figure out, is it programming, is it a different number of grade levels, is it something totally different? So the EC8 or pre-K 8 is an idea. It's not baked. We have plenty of time to go through that. I will be honest with you, this process is not typically a year. It is usually about 2 years if we're efficient and we're diligent. Because you have to figure out, well, what do we want? What's the programming going to be like? You have to hire the principal. They have to hire their staff. And all of this has to be done with enough runway to actually launch the school year successfully. And at the same time, we'll need to work with our general contracting partners to figure out what adjustments, if any, maybe not, need to be considered in the bond improvement package in order to kind of facilitate this new programming. But I want you to know that I would say the board and I are committed to ensuring that there is a AISD public education campus on this site. But I have to break the accountability chain. I just have to break it. If not, the risk is too great. And this is one solution that works globally. So that's the timeline. I know that some folks would like for us to go faster, but we just don't. That's just not possible given the complexity of building up a new school. All right, next question. If you want.
Thank you, Matthias.
Yeah.
Next question. What feeder pattern will Martin be part of when it's repurposed? That's Stacy S.'s question.
Well, yeah, so when I first read this, it was, we can't answer yet when it's reopened because we need to work with you all and what the identity of that campus might be, right, as the superintendent just alluded to. And sorry, I was pulling up the map just to confirm. Now, when it comes to the feeder pattern of the schools that are being reassigned, that students are being reassigned to, the students that currently live south of the river that are being reassigned to Lively would feed into Travis High School. Keeling, those students would be reassigned to Eastside, and then the Marshall students would feed into LBJ. Those schools do have small splits, but I believe that is the new boundaries. Now, Martin is one of those that currently all feed into, I think, 5 high schools. And so if you look at, it'll really be based on your specific address, because all of that is being it'll be much cleaner, so it's much easier to kind of look at the new boundaries versus kind of the existing Martin boundary when it comes to the feeder pattern.
Oh, oops. Next question. Why are you proposing, and this is not exactly to Martin, but in the area, why are you proposing taking 2 modernized schools from this community? According to the proposal, buses would not serve Go Valley and Sanchez. Can neighborhood students qualify for transportation to Sanchez and Go Valley? And before you respond to that, Matthias, I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So in this O2 area, Sanchez Elementary is now being proposed to be a campus-wide dual language school, and so that means it won't have an attendance zone. And then Go Valley is being proposed to be a campus-wide Montessori program. Again, those two schools wouldn't have attendance zones, but we would want students who currently attend those schools to opt into those programs. So I'll let you take it.
So Ali said it well. The one thing I would say is whenever we were doing the work, we looked at geographic areas. And the one thing we know is that historically, whenever it came to closures, consolidations, or any significant boundary changes, the burden of that weight in the system was carried by East Austin. That's just the honest truth. And so when you think about, Sanchez, Zavala, Go Valley, Martin, kind of all the schools in the area, and you look at the number of seats that we have too many. There aren't enough students that live in the area, not attendant, but that live in the area. So we had to get to a solution that allowed schools not to close, right? Introduce district-wide programming, and at the same time preserve the historic schools within this area. And so that's why you see a wall-to-wall program going to Sanchez that does also break an accountability chain, which again, trying to address multiple things with each of these solutions. Go Valley receiving Montessori, and again, this is all a draft plan, we're taking feedback, but that would also be a district-wide facility. And then Sanchez, being the neighborhood school, allows us to not have to close another school. Just to be really clear, that's what that allows us to do. I do want to point out that there's been lots of feedback about could we provide access to via transportation to Sanchez, and the answer is yes, we can. We have been taking feedback from our community, and this feedback, I promise you, every one of these comment cards, everything that we hear, we're taking it back, we're testing it. But what I want to be honest with you about is if we look at this for Sanchez, because we want to provide access to our emergent bilingual families, we want them to stay at Sanchez, we desperately do. We also need to consider, what are we going to do at Pickle, what are we going to do at Odom, and what are we going to do at Wooten, right? Because those are also wall-to-wall dual language programs. And so I want to be consistent. So we are considering that. I think we're very, very close. Obviously, because of version control, we're not going to kind of say yes to some things before we can say yes to a broad set of things that we receive through feedback. But yes, we can look at providing transportation. We have the ability to do that. We are the system. But I cannot say broadly that we can provide it to every student going through some type of transition. But for Sanchez, certainly. Hopefully that was helpful.
Next question.
Yeah.
What happens to the bond funds allocated to Martin? That's from Raul L.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that, Christine? Go.
Hi, everybody. So right now, our bond funds, we are just on pause right now. We need to make sure we understand what's happening, and we kind of need to look at our trajectory. So we've got all of our construction on pause. And to allude to what Superintendent Segura said earlier, we need to understand the identity and the future of this campus to continue that construction. So that's where we are right now with the construction for that. For the bond funds, that is something that we are looking at, right? When we have a finalized plan, that we want bond dollars to go with students. That is the goal. So we will look at all of our projects as a whole, because it's not just Martin. It's many of our schools in the same community. We have a bond project at every single Austin ISD school. So while that we can't give a certain answer right now, our goal is to follow with the school community, follow those students, and then also we'll see what the Martin construction will continue and look like. And that'll be an iterative process, and we'll keep everyone informed of what that looks like.
I just want to make sure that was clear. So, but that the funding will stay with Martin. It's just a matter of what that's going to look like based on that community process of deciding what Martin will be.
Yeah. So this is a unique situation because we are planning on having a school back at Martin. There are other schools that are going through a consolidation or a significant change, and there is not likely to be a school at that location. So every school and every scenario is slightly different, but I wanted to make that kind of differentiation and make that comment specifically for Martin. That's what makes this one unique.
Thank you. Okay, so that was the last of the questions that we had prepared. So we have scheduled this for 90 minutes. I think, what time do we have? 10 after. So I think we have about 15 minutes still to go, so that at this point we can open it up to any questions that y'all have, and then we can just kind of go over the last next steps. So, anybody have any questions? I'm going to have you speak into the mic.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Tamara. I'm a parent in the neighborhood. I know that you said it takes maybe 2 years to recraft and start a K through 8 program. And I just have to point out the irony here that we're like dismantling the whole school district right now in less than a year. So I just want you to really elaborate more on why this school couldn't next year turn into a K through 8.
Yeah, so I'm not the only person that has the authority. It takes the agency to approve our plan. And so what I'll tell you is, you know, in order for us to start with a school in the 26-27 school year, that plan would have to be submitted to the agency, and the commissioner would have to approve of that plan well before the school year started, which means that we would have to hire the principal for the ECA probably in January. I know, but the plan has to be approved. And the plan has to be approved, because the way that schools work is the agency, every school has a CDM.
Acronyms?
That acronym I don't know. Do you know what CDM is? It's a campus designation. It's a unique code to every. It's a unique identifier to every single school in the state of Texas, and that is the thing that accountability gets tied to. That's the thing that the PEIMS coding for students gets tied to. All of it gets tied to that one specific name, that specific code. Whenever you go through a TAP and the accountability chain gets tied to the campus, the agency is kind of working and tying that accountability chain to that CDN. Whenever you submit for a new school, the commissioner has to approve it. It is not something that is correct. But you have to. They do. It's not like a simple request. We have to have this period of engagement. We have to make sure that we have the programming, the curriculum is aligned to the TEKS. I mean, all the things have to be built and submitted. And what I'll tell you is, unfortunately, being here in the center of the state of Texas, everybody is hyper aware of what we're going through. And if I were to go and submit a plan, I would almost guarantee that the response back would be, we know that this is something you want to do, is given all that you're taking on. Remember, we're still in the TA agreed order for special education. We are going through this process now. I can almost guarantee that he would not approve it. What he will approve is a thoughtful plan that has community input in the appropriate timeline. And just to be honest, that's the timeline I think is possible.
Matthias, I think it might also help, because something that I think I've understood about how TEA works is that they want us to get students right now in the best learning environment possible. And to them, that is getting them into a school that's, you know, that's got good outcomes in terms of the STAR. And so I think that that's the other thing, that he doesn't want us to wait and restart and hope that you know, is going to serve our kids better. He wants to see us get them in the best environments as soon as possible.
Yeah, and if we were to do that, that wouldn't negate having to still make the move. And because we have, as was said earlier, 3 unacceptable ratings. And so if you take a year, in most years that you start up a new school, you're still figuring things out. It's really, really difficult to get it right in the first year. And so you end up putting, you know, a significant amount of risk introduced into the system, because now you're in year 4, probably going to have not the accountability rating you would want. And then once you start year 5, that's when the commissioner has the ability to really turn over the superintendent and install the board of managers. So we really need to clear the accountability risk. That is something we absolutely have to do. And I get it's not something that we thought we would have to do in these timelines. The compression of the 23, 24, 25 accountability has really set that. And I apologize, but I want to make sure that we all recognize this is a real risk. There will be school districts in the next week and a half, that get letters from the agency that they were going to be taken over. Like, this is real. It's happening across our state. It's not going away. And we got to keep local control.
You were first. You want to go? Okay. You'll be next.
If they deny by one of the turnaround plans, how does that trigger all of the other well-crafted part of this plan? Like, what's the timeline there?
Yeah, so a couple things. The timeline is once you submit our turnaround plans, and we're going to submit ours on the 21st of November. The board is going to vote on November 20th, so we submit the next day. The agency has up to 45 days to review and accept or decline. After the 45 days, if let's say they decline, then we would have to submit back a new plan, and then we would have 15 days. At that point, if a plan wasn't accepted, then the commissioner could actually move towards installing a board of managers and turning over the superintendent, which is, that's where you kind of lose control. So I wanted to kind of give everybody that timeline. That's how it works, which is why it's really important that whatever we submit gets accepted. I said that in the spring of last year. I'll continue to say it. I am not going to submit something that I don't have a high probability of confidence that will be accepted. Because of our relationship with the agency through the special education order, the deputy commissioners and others who are in charge of much of this work and are doing the reviews, we've been able to pose different scenarios to them and say, hey, we are doing something comprehensive, and I think they appreciate that. But because it's comprehensive, there's nuance to it. And we say, well, we don't give them exact schools. We won't say, we won't name schools, but we'll say this school with this student population is moving in this sequence. We have the TAP going here. Historically, this school has had this rating. How would you respond to that? We've gone through those meetings with the agency for the better part of 3 or 4 months, just getting feedback on different scenarios we could consider. And then about 2.5 weeks ago, by way of Region 13 and the agency, we sat down and said,
Can you explain what Region 13 is?
So Region 13 is an extension of the state through the Texas Education Agency, and they're really like a service center. They are effectively helping school districts in a region. Our region is Region 13, which travels from Austin effectively east, and they provide resources to help school districts navigate the agency. So that's kind of, they're like annexes of the Texas Education Agency. That's a good way to, I'm sorry? Like a consultant, but they're, so that's how it's structured. So we met with them and we shared with them our plan for the 3 UAs, and I use UAs, which is unacceptable accountability. I don't like using Fs. I don't like using, all the things. Just 3 UAs, but there's 3 UAs which trigger a TAP, and we have 2 UAs, and there are many of those. Total, we have 24. So we have to submit 24 TAPs to the agency on the 21st. So we sat with them about 2 weeks ago and we walked them through. This is our plan for, because now that this plan had been released, we can share with them, hey, this is how we're going to tackle this TAP, this TAP, this TAP, this TAP, all the way through, all 24 of them. We got feedback on how to refine the plan, things to consider, but there was nothing in that meeting that made me feel as though what we would be submitting would be declined. So if something were to change, let's say we got feedback, I told the agency I would love to get this feedback within a week or 2. Like, you can wait 45 days, but we're trying to do hard work here. Like, give me a week. Tell me as quickly as possible, and then let me understand what adjustments we need to make. So if there was a decline, though I wouldn't expect it, I would think it'd have to do with proportionality of students, in movement. Maybe there's a sum where they've said, well, if 51% of students go here, then that's where the TAP gets assigned. We don't have anything that close, but maybe there's a concern around something like that. We would come back, we make adjustments, but that's how it would work. And I will just say, we do not want to be in a place where you submit a plan that will get rejected. They know what they want to see. They know that we know what they want to see. And if we submitted something that wasn't in alignment, it would be viewed a certain way. That's for sure.
Mr. Matias, I have a lot of questions for you. I'm going to start in my language because I'm a Spanish speaker, and I see I'm the minority here. No? Okay. 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 Señor Matías, ha repetido una cantidad de veces, nosotros estamos trabajando, nosotros como comunidad estamos tomando estas decisiones. Si es un nosotros como comunidad, ¿por qué yo no veo mucha de mi comunidad aquí? ¿Por qué he visto más comunidad reuniéndose afuera en desacuerdo con estas decisiones que la que estoy viendo aquí.
Mr. Matias, you had mentioned, you've said we a lot, and as you say we, as we say we, I don't see a lot of
This one's off.
okay. I don't have anything on me. No, Inspector. I don't see the we in our community. And when I look at my community, we are not in agreement, but we're outside. We're not in here with you all. And I just want to know what you're going to do about that.
So, I can talk about it.
We're recording.
Okay. So we are wanting to engage. We will be present. We'll continue to be present. And our trustees have that expectation. They themselves engage. So if there is a place that we need to go to get feedback from our community that we're not currently going to, please let us know. But we have asked to partner with our school to have this space. If there are spaces that we need to have moving forward, I'm happy to have it. If we need to go have a meeting at a restaurant, I'm happy to do that as well. I hope that we will show up. I also want to communicate this is a large plan. Lots of communities are being impacted. And so I know that oftentimes not everybody can be everywhere at once, but if there's a place that you believe we should go to get feedback, please let us know. We felt as though working with Martin Middle School and bringing families and the community into Martin would be a good starting point, but happy to make adjustments if we need to move forward.
No es la primera vez que le pregunto esto directamente, lo he hecho en una ocasión anterior. También le voy a dar esta respuesta. Muchos de los padres que no se involucran en las escuelas, y se lo voy a decir también como padre que soy, de 3 estudiantes, 2 graduados más en años pasados. Cuando yo como padre no me siento bienvenido en una escuela o no me siento respetado, me va a costar mucho trabajo presentarme, porque si no fui respetado en ocasiones distintas, sé que no lo voy a hacer, sé que no voy a ser escuchado y sé que no se me está valorando como padre y probablemente a mis hijos dentro de esa escuela tampoco. Sé que quizás le cansa que le pregunte esto, pero esa es una de las razones en las que como distrito debieron trabajar desde hace mucho tiempo atrás, trabajar en la empatía que deberían de tener en cada persona o en todo el personal que tienen dentro del distrito, porque les falta bastante. Perdón.
Sorry, this is not the first time I've asked this, but I am going to ask again directly. As a parent, I feel like it would be hard to get involved. I am a parent of 3 students, 2 that have already graduated, and I still have a student. So as a parent, if I don't feel welcome, if I don't feel respected, it's going to be really hard to show up. I don't feel like I will be listened to, and I'm sure that you're tired of my asking of this, but as a district, you have to work on empathy for every person that is working here so that we all feel like we're welcome.
No. Okay.
Mire, no puedo generalizar con todos, porque realmente dentro del distrito hay muchísimas personas amables y que tienen la convicción de trabajar tanto con padres, estudiantes y dan el todo. Pero sí creo que es algo que ha faltado. Apoyo a todas esas personas que dan hasta de más en ocasiones, pero también se merecen ser respetados y también se merecen ser valorados y gratificados como es.
And I know I can't generalize with everyone. I know that there are many kind and personnel, and there are those that are just as convicted as we are to work with parents and students. But I do think that we're missing support and the values and the respect that we deserve.
So, first off, I'm very sorry that you feel this way. That's not what I would want any family, any parent, any guardian in Austin ISD to feel, ever. You know, I have been trying very hard for the last 2.5 years to build a trust-based culture, a culture that understands who we are as a city and leans into all of us, right? Whether, you know, you have parents that work multiple jobs, whether your lived experience is different than mine, it doesn't matter. Like, we should be there for our families. Now, I want to also acknowledge that it hasn't always been the case. You know, in years past, it hasn't been a trust-based culture. To get there requires having great principals. It requires making sure that we have direct lines of communication. It requires feedback loops so that we're constantly engaging, and also resources to support what some schools can't have that other schools do have. And we acknowledge that is an area of improvement. But I want you to know that is what you're describing is hard for me to hear, because that's the last thing I want in this school system, is for any parent to feel disrespected. There's a lot of work to do. It's a large system. We've been here for 144 years, but we're working on it. You know, I hope that you found at least some improvement as we stabilized the last couple years. It takes time, but we're happy to make adjustments and refine as we move forward. But I agree with you. We're not there yet, and it's a large system. You know, over 70,000 students. You know, it takes time, but I agree with you. It is an area that we need to focus on moving forward and improve on.
Solo quería mostrarle con esto que quizás esa es una de las razones del por qué hay más padres luchando afuera por estos cambios, porque hay más padres en oposición a estos cambios. Lo he dicho también anteriormente, no me opongo a los cambios, siempre y cuando no traigan desventajas a la comunidad. Y lo estoy sintiendo yo en desventaja con mis hijos. Al cambiar a mis hijos de escuela, los envían a otras. Quizás alguna que ya no califique para el BOS porque está a menos de 1 milla, según las reglas del distrito. Mis hijos tendrían que caminar. Vivo en Riverside. El trayecto de la high school que le tocaría a mi hijo sería la Travis, desde Riverside hasta Alton. Y toda esa avenida es una avenida que está llena de indigentes, es una avenida muy accidentada. Entonces no están tomando en cuenta todos esos riesgos en los que están poniendo a mi hijo. No están tomando en cuenta la situación en la que me ponen a mí, porque a pesar de que tengo automóvil, también trabajo, también tengo que cuidar mi estructura familiar, también tengo cosas que hacer, y no todo el tiempo voy a estar disponible para llevar a mis hijos.
One of the reasons that so one of the reasons that this is important, and that I think so many parents aren't here, but they're fighting on the outside, is because they feel they're opposed to this. And I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but it really is a disadvantage sending my children to other schools. And maybe it's because now they will have to take the bus because of the zone changes, and they'll be less than a mile from a school. But do you know what it's like to live and walk on Riverside? These are the projects. To go from Riverside to Old Torf, they're going to have to go past homeless. There's so many traffic accidents. And I don't know if I'll be able to get them a ride, but I don't think they'll qualify for the bus. And I do have a car, but I also have to work. And so I can't take them to school every day, and that really concerns me.
I can speak on this a little bit. So I'm not sure exactly where you live, but our Riverside boundary, and if you can go back to it, Allie, if we would always give a bus, especially your student would be zoned to Travis and they would have to cross I-35, that would be a hazardous route. And so that's just our policy. We would always give any student that's considered a hazardous route, or if there's, transient populations, and so that's something that we would always provide any student in that type of scenario. Thank you.
This changes, con estos cambios, mi hijo estudia en Eastside Memorial. Con estos cambios, él tendría que cambiarse a Travis. Mi hijo tiene la oportunidad de tomar el bus a su escuela en estos momentos. Una vez que se realice ese cambio, él no podrá tomar bus, porque relativamente es menos de 1 milla. Y aunque es menos de 1 milla, es más de un peligro el que él tendría que pasar en ese trayecto de casa a escuela.
So, I know what you said, but do you want to? Okay. So, well, first off, because your student's already at Eastside Early College High School, they will be able to continue through Eastside Early College High School. One of the things that we acknowledge is that we need to have clearer transfer and transition plan language in our plan, and so you're going to see that as we develop a new draft, as we finalize the draft. I also want to acknowledge the disruption that it causes, because your student was receiving transportation, and now if they're transferring, it may look different. And this is the type of feedback that we need to understand so that we can make adjustments. We do not want to make it more difficult than it has to be on families as we move through the transition. We are taking input to make adjustments so the transition can be done in a healthy, most loving way possible, but I also know it's going to be a disruption. So that feedback is helpful. We are making adjustments to our transfer policies, our transportation standard operating procedures, because I want to make sure that we acknowledge that there is movement and we do whatever we can to create as few disruptions as possible. So that is feedback that we're taking back, and we are trying to address it as best we can.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really concerned about the teachers. I understand the budget deficit and I understand the state accountability, but I kind of want to focus on locally. I do agree that superintendents, school districts are kind of coerced into making these decisions to maintain local control. I'm concerned about the teachers. It's really demoralizing that construction has stopped, and the teacher or the principal at the next school has the authority, but based off of what? Do they have the right to return here? I guess that's my question for now.
So I want everybody, because there's been some people that have said things on Facebook or whatever that we're going to release 700 teachers. That, to be clear, that is not happening. We've never said that. We would never agree. We would never even propose that. There have also been people that have said, well, Matthias is looking at 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contracts. That never even entered my mind until someone posted it on Facebook. So that is not how we think. That is not who we are. I desperately wanted to share with our community and to our staff, more importantly, that we had built out a transition plan for our staff that was thoughtful, but also recognized that each scenario is different. If you have a turnaround plan, there are requirements that are not of the district, but of the state that we have to meet. And many of our educators have these designations, and we'll be able to facilitate that and place them and ensure that they have a home in Austin ISD. We have programmatic moves. An example of this would be Becker to Sanchez. Well, again, we want to have our students feel like it's their home, it's their school. So you want familiar faces. So that is a different type of staffing plan. We have a process for that. We also have processes for turnaround plans where the school that is the receiving school has not historically struggled with accountability. And this is one of those instances that is a little bit more challenging, because from the state's perspective, if that school has had an A, an A, an A, or a B, a B, a B, let them keep doing their thing. Give them the responsibility of hiring. but we have the responsibility of hiring. So it's important that we work with those principals, not only in the transition, and I've met with all the principals that are going through the transition, and I've said to them over and over again, we protect staff, we protect staff, we protect staff. We are freezing outside hires. We're not hiring anybody external to Austin ISD until we are very far down this process. And I'm also want to be really clear, like we are releasing surveys to understand what our educators want. There are some educators who've told me, even principals have told me, Matthias, I've been here for 15 years, but I live up north. I'd like to actually find a school closer to North Austin. Like all those things are helpful. We're working through them. I do not want a single educator in this district to think that they are not centered as part of this work. They very much are. It's an expectation of mine, our trustees, certainly of me. There are details to be worked out, and we're actually going to be refining and updating our plans. But that is how we plan to do this. We hire between 550 and 700 teachers every year, right? So people ask, well, the math doesn't work out, the math doesn't work out. It actually does work out. Just look at our numbers. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get to be at your campus. Now, the campus that's receiving most of the students, we're going to work through that. That's our desire. But you're right, there'll be some adjustments. But every adjustment occurs, we're going to be doing it very, very thoughtfully. I need to be really clear. That is not something we've ever said. It is not true. And if anybody says it, please tell them that's not who we are. If the state came in, if anybody else came in, all that goes out the window. So I just want to be really, really clear, because that's frustrating to hear that, because that's never something we've ever said. I don't know if that was helpful. Sorry.
And I just want to show folks, so if you're familiar with our consolidation webpage, it's just austinisd.org/consolidate. There's several extra areas you can explore over here, but if you click the resources one on the side, it brings up all of these resources we have. This is where you can find that staffing guideline that I talked about. It's in English and Spanish. It's been shared directly with all Austin ISD staff. And it just explains kind of those different scenarios. This is the timeline that Matthias was talking about, how we're going to freeze hiring and try to find a place for all of our people before we even think about recruiting externally. And then it talks about the different types of consolidations, and then there's corresponding kind of guidelines for each of those. So I just wanted y'all to see where you can find that. Oh, right, and thank you. I want to introduce you, Brandy, and you can do it.
Hi, I'm Brandy. I'm the Talent Strategy Officer for the district.
And she wanted me to share that her team has been going around, so to every school that would be affected by a consolidation that's proposed at this point, her team has been going around and going through these guidelines with them, letting them understand what their options will be, talking about that interest survey that they'll be doing, so that they get the support that they need. All right, I'm going to go here, and then next to you, and then to you.
Hello. So I'm just looking at the TAP plan. So you're moving students from a school with an F rating to 2 schools with a D rating, and you're also approaching like the max enrollment, from what I understand. So like, what are your plans to help the new schools control for this extra stress? Because it's like the max enrollment, and so all the stresses with that.
Yeah, great question. So I want to be. So we are tracking. So great question. So we are tracking all the percentages. The Texas Education Agency builds the turnaround plans based off assignment, right? So we have to assume, based on where the students live, that this percent will go to this school, right? In this case, it'll be Keeling for the majority. But we also know that, we also understand your transfer rates. We also understand transfer rates of all the other schools. We have an understanding of what the final capacities, the final utilizations will be at these campuses. But you're absolutely right. One example is General Marshall. General Marshall has a D this year. But we also know this is the 3rd year in a startup of a 6, 7, and 8. And we just talked about that when you start up a new school, it's very, very difficult to get accountability kind of where the state expects that quickly. So yes, they have a D, but they've been working. We understand what Dr. Benson's doing over there. This campus is stabilizing, is moving in the right direction. So we have extreme confidence that though it's a D now, it is moving in the right direction. But we are going to provide additional resources. Our plan is so much more detailed than what the state requires. So the TAP plan is very kind of distilled down. It's like, you got to do these things, these things, these things. Our plan is much more detailed, much more nuanced. And the last thing I'll add is I want our families to know that just because you're a D school or whatever letter grade doesn't mean that you're less than. I just want to be really, really clear about that, because I've had people tell me, well, Matthias, their school's a D, and I'm like, well, they were a B last year. And we just spent 2 years arguing around why the accountability system doesn't work, and then now you're using that to argue against me why this move shouldn't happen. Like, there are great things happening in all of our schools, including Martin. The reality is that I still have to navigate this state, accountability system. And so we are going to provide additional resources, not just at the TAP schools, but also at the schools that are receiving the majority of students or large percentages of students. I will say, however, if there is some split, I can think of the middle school that where the small percent is going to a school. In that case, you probably wouldn't see the same level of adjustment from a resource perspective because it's a minority in the population perspective. So that's how we're going to tackle it. But we also will be providing additional resources, which is also somewhat laid out in the staffing plan.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Mrs. Herrera. I'm a bilingual social worker here at Martin Middle School. I have spent 14 years before I went to Navarro. So I went to Navarro for a year and a half and came back to Martin. So I've been working with families for so many years. I have seen transformation, gentrification. I have seen demolished apartments on Riverside. I have seen parents struggling to keep their students at Martin. I have seen Mexican Americans moving from this area, selling their homes, So I have lived with families at Martin, with principals, with assistant principals, working with Dr. Garcia, back in the day, assistant principals of middle school, a very ethical and hardworking man. So I have experienced many things. Parents are pivotal in decision making in the school transformation. For me, not having the representation of parents in this meeting, as many as we needed, as partners are, is sad. One of the things that the parents said about it, where are the representation? And your answer was that, please give the feedback. We're going to tell us where we need to go. So I'm thinking, when you do a presentation, we do data, we bring reports. We base our outcomes on data that we have. We map, we strategize. But why we don't strategize to go where the parents are? Do we have an office that will say, Ali, can you please do a mapping and tell me where Martin families live and we can go where they are? It's difficult for families, Mr. Matthias, to come to do some meetings when they have to work daily. It was back in the day, it's hard to bring parents, but these rooms, this library, if there were cameras and they can talk, they will see we have 30 to 40 parents in meetings. And I know that many parents are not coming, you can put many excuses, immigrations, but it's not that. We all have to have the passion and dedication and love to what we do to bring those parents, because they sometimes don't know what is happening in their schools. And they might not speak the language. They might not be able to, maybe they work in the evening, they cannot have the virtual meetings. So, compassion and love for the families that have students here. I have worked with teachers, a lot of teachers. I think Moses and Mr. Cortez are the one that has been longer in Martin. Teachers are very dedicated. Used to come at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Teachers will come to my office. We do a lot of talking about what we can do. And then another thing that I was thinking, Mr. Matthias, do we have in the district a measuring tool to see the performance of how we are doing with our families? How do we do that? Do we just have people to do this, that? But do we measure that? So I really encourage the district, with the bottom of my heart and the love that I have, that I have for families, employment retention, it's pivotal as well. Parents come and they want to see Mr. Ramos. Has been forever. Oh, Mr. Ramos is my teacher of my son. So Mr. Garcia was the PhD teacher for so many years. So this is because the academic success of students depends a lot from the parents. Parents are important in the education of the children. Because you come, and I tell parents, you don't need to speak English for your student to succeed. They need discipline, they need dedication, we have after school programs, there's a lot of things, but if they are not involved and they are not coming and they don't know Mr. Matias, it's not something that they're going to be have priority on that. So do we measure how we welcome the parents? Do we measure the parent involvement in this school? Are we going to be mapping where they live? Back in the days with Dr. Garcia, we'll walk and those buildings that were demolished. And we went where the parents were. We bring hot dogs. When one time, one of the apartments broke the second floor where they walk, parents were crying because they would buy food. And they said, Miss Herrera, I had $200 of food in that refrigerator. Now I don't have access to my apartment. So we have to do the walk where they are, not to bring them over here. But just a suggestion, Mr. Matias. And thank you for everything you do. And transformation is pivotal and it's important, but we also need to have the input of our families, for they are what they're going to be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herrera. And I just want to share, so we do have other opportunities coming up for these conversations. I'll have to check the calendar, but Martin will have, every campus that's going through these turnarounds will have coffee with the principal, their campus advisory council, and I'm happy to work with your parent support here to figure out if there are other spaces that we need to be in that can reach more families and get them involved in this process. Additionally, when whatever package is ultimately voted on, we are going to be standing up a team that's going to help support the transitions, and that's bringing the school communities together, bringing stakeholders from both school communities to organize things like you've said, like block walks, to make sure that folks know, for example, folks around Sanchez, that they know, hey, Sanchez is still your school, we want you to go to this school, and making sure that we do mailers so families understand where their new school assignment is. So we'll have teams stood up to kind of do that work that you're talking about. And as far as tracking, our parent support teams do track their attendance at the different events that they hold. They do surveys to see if families are finding the opportunities beneficial. And so I will work more closely with your PS to see what we can do to make sure we get more parents involved in this kind of decision-making process at Martin.
Just very quickly, we have an opportunity right now to move forward with everything that we're doing. These incredible parents and community members here should be the starting line for the conversation about what needs to happen in a year or two, whatever it may be. So can I ask that we immediately begin the conversations right now and form a group that is Martin, because as an alumni of Martin Middle School and as a longtime member of this community and the community as a whole, I support our public schools, but it is so important that we remember the fact that these teachers that have put their heart and soul into everything that they do here, as was mentioned, there needs to be a right of return, because they have laid the groundwork for a lot of things that have happened here, positive. And as you point out, these letter grades that are placed on our schools, these scarlet letters, are really, don't really show the great things that are happening here. So let this be day one of the planning strategy for our school here, our Martin Middle School, our AISD Martin Middle School.
So, okay, I appreciate that comment. That's exactly what we want to happen. I think what I'm challenged with, just honestly, is we're in the in-between phase right now. We're just like in between. We have, principals that are going through transitions and they're ready to engage. They want to begin planning, what happens in 26, 27 as we move through these consolidations or TAP plans. So everybody's ready to go, but this is still a draft plan and we're still getting feedback. And so I'm cautious. Like I can commit to you that's what we're gonna do. I'm cautious about doing anything before the vote that is too concrete, only because the criticism that I'll get is, Matthias, the board hasn't even voted yet. Why are you doing this? You know, I mean, Gabe, you know it. I mean, you see it. Sometimes you've said it. I'm just teasing you. but that's kind of what's happening right now. So I want to start planning. We want to put the folks together, begin to get this work done. You know, I hope our community knows that, you know, once we execute a plan and we get something done, I will get it done. We're about to, cross our fingers, be out of the TA agreed order before too long. This is something 2 years ago we thought was going to destroy AISD. So I just want you to know that we can do difficult things. We can do them together. I plan to do it with community, not to community. We're just at a very difficult moment right now with all the things that we're navigating. But yes, absolutely, bringing the community together to plan what the next kind of vision of Martin Middle School is a priority for us. And I'll tell you, it's a priority for our trustees. You know, that's some of the feedback I've gotten directly from them as well. I know. Sorry about that.
So we have time for one or two more questions, and then I have a message from some parents who couldn't be here that we're going to read at the very end.
Sorry, I have apologize if this question, like general question, is not appropriate for this forum, but with AISD enrollment already approaching like really low levels, how do you expect parents to engage with the school and the school district if like the threat of having their whole community, like the schools are, it's now a possibility that it can be just yanked away, like closing the schools and having to integrate their students into a whole new community at will.
Yeah, so what I would say is, so we're losing, so right now, we've been on a decline for a little while. It's kind of began to balance out and level out. And then what happened? The federal administration, began to add more constraints around immigration. So we're seeing losses and no new immigrant families coming in, and those that were here are leaving. So I just want to be really clear, like these are things that are happening outside of us, and we are having to respond. But I will also tell you that I cannot right now pay for the resources needed so that every student who's been historically underserved gets what they need to be successful, period. I mean, I would argue, why have for the last 20 years families left the neighborhood and chosen to go to O. Henry or chosen to go to the middle schools as opposed to Martin? Like, I would argue that if we actually have the ability to pay for the resources and ensure that it's equitable and we have aligned feeder patterns like elsewhere, then East Austin, in my mind, would strengthen opposed to weaken, and families who are at charters will come back. I mean, because there are lots of students in these charters who've chosen to go to a different school district, a different school. Why did they do that? Well, it's because there were decisions that were made 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago that put us in a difficult position. But we cannot ask families to come back unless we are investing in our schools, moving accountability, because that right, wrong, or indifferent, when it comes down to it, at that dinner table, when you're comparing two schools, people will use that letter grade. It is a scarlet letter, but they will use it. Because, I mean, they don't know what we know. We're in the middle of it. But a lot of families just go down to a letter grade, and I understand that. So we have to do two things. We have to create the systems to be responsive to the environment we're in. We have to allocate resources to strengthen our schools so that no matter where we are, we're educating our way, and then when the STAR summative assessment is done, we perform. But we're not training our system to perform to be responsive only to that test. We're responding to educate our students in a way that aligns with our values, which means we got to keep our board in place, which means we got to keep our team in place. And then we take that assessment and we're successful. And if you do that, you have strong schools, strong neighborhood schools that are well-resourced, you will draw students back. There's no doubt. There will be disruption. I acknowledge that. I'm trying to account for it so that families don't leave. And I don't want people to think that it's been yanked away. You know, like these are things that, you know, are outside some of our controls, and I don't have lots of options. I just don't. If I did, I would explore them. I just honestly don't. So we're trying to find solutions that address multiple things and position us for success for the next, 50 years. Yes, year 1 and 2 are important, but 50 is really what we're trying to get to.
All right, this will be our last question.
First, I'm Rebecca Salcedo. I work with AISD and Student Support Services. And I want to say first, I appreciate the passion today that has come during this meeting. I think a lot of us in this room get very passionate when we speak from time to time, especially concerning these things. And so I appreciate the passion that has come through your voice today to see that you are angry as well. right? I'm just gonna say angry because that's how we feel, right? I attended Johnston and Porter, which are now closed, and with the multiple proposals going on, I support a supervisor grant that we have from DOE for Martin, Allison, and Go Valley, of which would all be no more grant, right? If things continue to get approved with the way that they are, because Allison would leave the vertical team and the grants for the vertical team, Go Valley would be repurposed, and Martin, right, looking at our options with Martin. So one, for me, on a grant level, that's $2.5 million. It's a 5-year grant that we are at risk of losing because our campuses would no longer serve the narrative of the grant. That's a whole nother separate issue with a lot of other things going on, and I don't expect a response to that. Just throwing that out there since we're all taking notes on things that are going on our campuses as these changes are happening, right? In addition to that, I think about how we're gonna continue to support enrollment at Eastside, right? Because watching Johnston and going through Johnston closing, and then watching what's happening as we divide to support a lot of things, and I see the good in where y'all are coming from and the decisions you're having to make, I do. But I also think, man, how are we going to support enrollment at Eastside, right? How are we going to support Eastside now? Because we have a memory hall there. Johnston does. It's cute. The other part of that is our grant works with wraparound services, right? My experience is clearly not at the district level transformation experience level. I'm experienced with campus level transformation, right? In the classrooms, at the small table, in the groups, right? So I'm thinking, like many of us, and I've heard voice today, those schools receiving our students, having been a teacher with multiple learning levels in one classroom, and we're talking about some students on grade level because we are making progress and we're on trajectory to get out of D, right? Now I've got some babies that are 3 grade levels below, and we are in a deficit and we don't have more staff yet, right? We're not there yet. So how can we continue to support, and how do we be a part of that, those of us who are experienced with that or want to continue to support the students so that they feel supported? And our teachers, we don't want to lose the amazing teachers at our schools receiving these students who do it from their heart as well, right? So to me, it's, are we growing the MTSS department? Because we all know that MTSS is a huge part of not only what's mandated, but what works. And how are we going to continue to support that piece of the transition? And then the wraparound services that we have contracts with our service providers that we know are happening at these campuses. We supervise Allison, Go Valley, Martin specifically to know how many families are getting rental assistance and support services through CIS and Austin Voices and TRIO. Do those contracts continue to get renewed and somehow continue to be provided? Because although we're going to provide, Daisy's children transportation, people still need rental assistance, right? And they still need the food pantries. Brighter Bites does amazing work at Allison for that community. If Allison moves to a vertical, I know this is a different subject, but I'm just thinking those things.
Yeah, so this is, I appreciate the question because one of the things that I've asked our trustees and our community to consider is how important the November timeline is. We need to be thinking about transition. We need to be thinking about all the things you brought up, whether it's grants that have to be negotiated, whether resources that have to be deployed. The worst thing we can do, honestly, is to delay a vote that has our future, stability of the organization, in it. 1 month, I think I've heard in the community, Matthias, why don't you delay till December? Well, when you think about enrollment, the enrollment process starts in November. You think about, hiring of principals. We said we're going to hire principals in December. This vote doesn't take place in December. Now I'm hiring principals in January. The enrollment system and the enrollment process is all of December, all of January, all of February, into March. If I lose one of those months, now I have 3 months. I've lost 25% of the time needed to actually make the improvements. Y'all know how frustrating Enroll Austin can be? It's not because we make it hard. It's because we have to get partners to actually do the coding to improve the system. That takes time, and what I don't want to do is to fail on execution. I want to get to a place where we can take a vote, understand that there's an urgency around it because of the environment we're in, and then spend time planning. The grants, student movement, staff movement, the resources I need to deploy to make sure that transitions occur in a very thoughtful way, whether it's transportation or otherwise. If we lose time in the spring semester, then we will start the 26-27 school year and be out of position to be successful. That's just the honest truth. And I will not support that. We either take it on or you know, or that we don't, and then who knows what happens. But I just want you to know, because you remember 6th grade got taken out of Martin in April. Think about how long that took to recover. We didn't even recover from it. I would argue that some of the elementary schools in the area who were impacted adversely from an accountability perspective struggled because they had the 6th grade at those campuses. But we did that in the late spring. We were scrambling like crazy to try to get that to work, and it never ultimately took root. You cannot do that to people. You cannot do it, and I'm not going to do it. So I'm committed to not making those decisions in the spring. The one thing we cannot take away is time for families to plan. So your questions around grant, yes. If we know what we're doing, then we can have those conversations. We can work with Michelle Wallace at OID. We can figure out if there's opportunity to renegotiate those contracts. I would argue, and I'd make a strong argument, that students are students, and that just because we change the feeder pattern, or we can figure out what that looks like. I will tell you that you'll see me be supportive of any decision that keeps resources deployed where they're originally intended, school specific. That's what they're intended for. Feeder pattern, that's us. Like, we do that. So I just want you to know that that's what I keep hearing, and I think your point's an important one, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understood why November is important. We will fail on. We won't say I'll fail. I will say on the execution side, we will do more harm, if we don't have appropriate time to plan and transition. Gabe's, we're talking right here about getting the Martin community to talk about beginning to plan for a new school. Well, you lose a whole month. Or you're not going to start until after the vote takes place, honestly. And then you're in the holiday break, so you're probably starting in January. I just want to be really, really clear. Like, time, it seems like it's really far away, but we start planning for the school year for next year already. Like, that's happening now. So.
Thank you so much. And I do have some remarks from a parent that they wanted me to read, but I'm going to real quick, just as a reminder, I don't know why this is zoomed out, but so this is our timeline. I've mentioned already we're in this phase right now of we have the digital participation, you have the QR code on the back of your seats, so plenty of time to still get that in by the 28th. We also have the meetings coming up. If you go to austinisd.org/consolidate, you'll see the remaining community meetings that are happening both district-wide, as well as all of the schools that are also having conversations like these. So if you go to one, bring someone next time so we can get more folks involved. November 6th is that date that I shared that the board will be discussing the revised version of this plan, and that will go public on October 31st. And then that November 20th is the vote, and it's cut off on the screen for some reason, but the consolidations wouldn't take effect. We just wanted to make sure it was really clear until next school year. We would have that vote in November, but this, as Matthias was saying, our superintendent, we want the rest of this school year to plan so that we can have a successful launch of the next school year. And this is that QR code to the comment card, the website, the resources that I shared where you'll find that staffing guide. And there's also what we call a story map that is kind of a visualization of kind of all of the proposals across the district and kind of how we reach those decisions. So lots of resources, austinisd.org/consolidate, where you can find all of this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just read the remarks that this parent shared with me. So it's addressed to you, Mr. Segura, to the principal and the school community. Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss this with respect and open heart. Mr. Segura, we know your experience comes from the field of civil engineering, an area that seeks to build strong, safe, and lasting structures, and that is valuable. But today we want to remind you that education is the foundation of all buildings, even those that you have helped build yourself. We remember some words that you mentioned at one point. Many changes can weaken structures or cause them to collapse. We have taken your words to heart. Education is a structure. Without education, there are no engineers, no architects, no leaders, or strong communities. A society without education collapses, no matter how solid its buildings are. We understand that the district faces financial challenges and structural challenges, but when we talk about closing or consolidating schools, we're deciding more than the fate of a building. We're deciding the future of children, families, and an entire community. We take up another phrase you mentioned. We must integrate as a community to create a strong education system. As an integrated community, we know that a school is not just a set of walls. It is the heart of a neighborhood, the place where children feel safe, where parents find support, and where families grow together. Closing a school is like breaking a bond that took years to build, and even with technical arguments, the human damage can be measured in numbers. Structures can be rebuilt, budgets can be adjusted, but a generation that loses access to a closed, Quality education doesn't recover so easily. Therefore, we ask that before making decisions that produce a collapse within Austin ISD, we look beyond the plans and numbers. May the voices of students, teachers, and families who live within these schools every day be heard. May it be remembered that an educated community can build any structure, but a structure without the participation of the entire community and without education remains empty, soulless, and without purpose. Education is not an expense, it is an investment. It is the greatest, strongest, and most lasting construction a society can leave behind. Education is non-negotiable. We educate ourselves to learn how to negotiate. We educate new generations so they can resolve conflicts, find arguments, and improve the world without destroying it. Thank you for listening to us and for your willingness to be here with us. We hope this conversation is not just about buildings, but about people, dreams, and futures, because that is where progress is truly measured.
No, I appreciate kind of closing with that that letter. What I will tell you is, yes, my background years and years ago was engineering, and then it became finance, and then it became, operations. Then it became, really a focus on how to support large systems, large public education systems, to allocate the resources to where they're needed most. Like that's, at the end of the day, if you go back generations, that's been the challenge. How come Black and brown students have not been resourced in the same way, or been resourced to meet the needs decades ago than they are now? Like, why did that happen? I mean, and what decisions were made at that point? So, yes, my background is non-traditional, but I am a systems person, and I want people to know that over the last 2.5 years, we've done an incredible amount of work that this community, all communities in Austin, should be very proud of. Whether it's navigating the TA agreed order, whether it's implementing MTSS, multi-tier systems of support, so for the first time we have an understanding of where all of our students are, whether it's us, getting to an aligned curriculum. I want to be really honest. We had, 15, 16 different curriculum being run within all of our schools. Who do you think that hurts? It hurts the students who have high mobility rates. When you go from one school where you're one scope and sequence, you go to another school, a different scope and sequence, and the staff is trying to figure out where they're coming from and what they need. It's a system that was designed to produce the outcomes we have. And the outcomes we have are that schools in certain parts of town have been under-resourced, and because of that, over years have gotten to a point where it's been difficult for them to break the accountability chain. This is not a Band-Aid solution. It has to be something comprehensive, because we're at a moment where only a comprehensive change will work. I intended to bring things together that allow us to address, as I talked about, transfers and and budgets and program stability and aligned feeder patterns. We would have never, ever taken on feeder patterns unless it was all tied together. Think about that. In 20 years, when you look back, I would argue that one of the most profound things that this plan will have done will have aligned feeder patterns. I mean, why is it that when you go to Anderson High School, all the students there at Murchison are wearing Trojan hats? And you come to Martin, you go to, Mendez, you go to schools and there's 4 or 5 high schools. You break up community. That's just not, we can't do that. We can't do it. So I just want you to know that I appreciate you. We are at a time where there's immense disruption. I'm trying to be responsive to all the risks that we're navigating. Keeping local control is absolutely a priority of mine. Being responsible for educating our students is something I take, I give my life to it. I mean, I really do. And we're going to take this input, we're going to refine, we're going to improve, and we'll take the next step together. So I appreciate all of y'all. These meetings matter. We take the feedback, we'll adjust, and I appreciate all of y'all spending time with me this morning. So thank you.